I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Welcome to 2025, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope you had a good time. I went to Tractor Tavern in Ballard and saw some local bands playing some cover songs. It was really fun. The last episode we did, I replayed an episode, and at the beginning of that with Amber Simonson, we talked a little bit about resolutions and how she wants to move away from resolutions and goals and think about instead, how do we want to feel at the end of 2025? What do we want to be true at the end of 2025? And then do a kind of a work back schedule and start creating small steps to get there. So I haven't quite gotten there yet. I was reflecting back and journaling on 2024, but I haven't quite mapped out my 2025. I do have some ideas. I'll share them in case you want to steal them. But physical health, I think that's on there every year, and that's kind of topical for today's episode. You'll hear in a minute why. And I want to, my current client for event planning, I think it's most likely going to end by March just because of their event needs for 2025. So I want to make it through 2025 doing freelance event planning and not going back to a full-time W-2 employee, but we will see. So I'm putting it in the universe. If you have any leads or any clients or you yourself need some event help, reach out to me. In terms of the podcast, my goal is to increase listenership. So a lot of people kind of ask how it is to get guests, and luckily there's so many amazing Seattle CEOs, including the one today. And I've been fortunate enough for them to say yes to this. So the goal really is to increase listenership, and I'll be doing more video content and outreach and all of that. And if you can share it, that is also appreciated. And then the last thing I'll say is that I always try to have kind of a silly one. So one year it was if somebody bumped into me, instead of saying sorry, like most women do and most people do, to just say, oh, excuse me. So that has become a new habit of mine. And one time I did to watch all the Oscar nominated films for Best Picture. And I try to do that every year. So this year, I think it's going to be buy new clothes every quarter because I don't buy new clothes. I have a hard time spending money on that. I don't know why. That is my 2025. So sitting here with me today is Dawn Riling, president of Olympic Hot Tub. Welcome to the podcast.
Greetings and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And thanks for having me here at the showroom. It's been really fun. Do you have 2025 goals and resolutions? Have you thought about those?
No, I mean, I was thinking, it's very funny that you said that about clothes because I can't stop buying clothes. So maybe I should have a resolution that I'll skip buying clothes less for a quarter.
Yeah, for reals. Well, I was just walking around your showroom and there was a brief moment where I was like, should we record the podcast in a hot tub? Like, not with the water, but then I walked around and almost all of your hot tubs have water in it.
They do.
And that's unusual, right?
Well, that's kind of one of the mainstays of our company. It always has been since it started in 1977. The previous owners used to have a hot tub on a pier behind their store in Fremont, and you would be able to go out to the end of the pier and actually soak in the tub.
Oh, wow.
With the lake right there.
That's beautiful.
And we've just continued that tradition, and we've always wanted people to try it before they buy it if we can get them to do it.
Yeah, because
not everybody's going to be that bold.
Yeah, you showed me robes and a changing area if people want to actually just get into the hot tub. And then the other thing about it, you were saying that these are all saltwater hot tubs, which is different than your typical chlorine and stuff, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's far more eco-friendly, but the manufacturer of our product kind of pioneered the idea of saltwater therapy for hot tubs. You've seen it for pools for years, but they're the only ones that kind of mastered how to do it in a hot water environment and, make it easy for you to take care of it. And they actually started offering salt back in 2009.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's not new to us. And about 99% of what we sell definitely goes out the door with salt water on it. It's just much better for your body and it's better for the environment.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a lot of marketing on health and being better and less about relaxing and luxury and more about being healthy. And we'll probably talk more about that. But I want to let the listeners know that you have been president of Olympic Hot Tub for 8 years and you've worked with the company for close to 30. You're coming up on your anniversary, right?
I am. It's going to be in May.
Okay. And prior to at Olympic, he worked in retail companies like Disney and Nordstrom and J. Jacobs. So this episode's going to be very heavily retail focused. So I'm excited to hear your insights in that. But before we do that, can you give the listeners kind of a sense? We talked a bit about your company, but the size of your company, and we're not talking mom and pop here. Like you've been on the fastest growing private companies list a couple of years in a row now.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you say that because I still think of this as a small business.
Do you? Okay.
And when I bought the company, we had 5 locations. This was in 2016.
Okay.
5 locations. We were about an $8 million company. The pandemic was very good to us, but I had a lot of dreams and goals for the company, of course, when I first bought it, and I believed that we could expand and grow. Now we have 8 stores. Back then, we had maybe 23 employees. I think I have 65 now.
Okay.
And we're about a $22 million company.
Okay, wow.
So it grew a lot in the last 8 years.
Yeah, it did. And you service all of Washington, or do you service outside of Washington?
No, we have a set service area for the manufacture of the tubs that we carry. It's still a big service area. I mean, it's the greater Puget Sound region. And a couple of years ago, we took on the peninsula and we opened a store in Sequim.
Oh, cool.
So we go all the way up to north to Arlington, south to Centralia, Chehalis, on Alaska and Napavine, if people know where that is. And then all the way out to Ocean Shores and to Pacific Beach and Seabrook. We sell the tubs for Seabrook to the cottages there. So we have a pretty big territory.
Yeah, that's incredible. So let's talk about your journey specifically. You started out as a part-time admin person, a worker here at Olympic. How did you go from that to president and owner of the company?
It won't be probably just 1 to 2 minutes, but I'll make it fast. I promise.
It's okay.
Because there's a lot of ground to cover. But I started part-time in the corporate office working for one of the previous owners, Alice. She wanted somebody to help her out with some marketing stuff and with some like forms creation, just really basic admin stuff, in addition to some help with marketing. So I did that for 3 months. And by then, I had a chance to see what the company was all about, the products they sold, the service that they give. And it felt like it was really similar to what I was used to at Nordstrom, but it was a lot more civilized because I'd be off at 6 o'clock every night. I'm like, who does that in retail?
Oh, yeah.
So, they had a sales position open up in Seattle, and this is a funny story. They were downstairs. Alice was talking to the other 2 people in the showroom about how are we going to find somebody new to work here. And this guy walked by and opened up the door, who probably back then was trying to satisfy his quota for the number of jobs he applied so he could have unemployment.
Oh,
and he's like, hey, do you have any openings? And Alice is like, well, yes, we do. And he's like, oh, no. And he
I don't actually want a job.
Went running down the street. And I come down to join him for lunch. And I said, well, what about me? And you talked about my retail career, but I had a long retail career and I've been in management, and I just didn't want any responsibility for anybody else but myself.
Yeah.
When I started my next retail job. So I said, well, look, I don't know and I'd never worked on commission till that point either. In all of my retail career.
I'm surprised. Okay.
I said, look, I don't know if I can sell and live on commission. I don't know if I'm going to like it, but at least you know who I am. I'm a known commodity. So if it doesn't work out, it's no harm, no foul.
That's true. That's a good way to phrase it.
That's how it started. And 5 days after I started on the floor, I sold my first tub.
5 days. Wow.
Yeah. And, I just kind of like moved through the ranks, which is also a very Nordstrom-esque kind of thing to do, which is what where I'd come from before that. Was a salesperson, then a store manager, an accessories buyer for the company, which they never had that position. I proposed that they do it. Then I became their first sales manager, and then became the vice president before I bought the company and became the president.
Wow. I feel like it started with why not me? And I like that. Why not? What about me?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so we're going to talk about 4 stories today. The first one is Seattle Times did an article about trends in the retail world. So we'll get Don's take on whether he agrees or disagrees or has some insights there. And then we'll talk about Bartell's Drugs in U Village is closing. Party City is also closing. And then Nordstrom is going private. So like I said, it's a little bit of a retail episode today. So we'll start with retail trends. The Seattle Times article says value was vogue in 2024. Basically saying like people are looking for cheaper options because of everything's so damn expensive right now. So people are looking for a little bit more of some of those value places. They counted 48 retail bankruptcies in the U.S. compared to 25 the year prior, and a good amount of restaurant chains closing, which is the highest number since 2020. So overall, things don't seem to be doing great for retail, and we'll find out more if that applies to hot tubs as well. But it kind of separates the article into winners and losers. So people that are doing well right now and people that are not doing so well. So I'll kind of go over that briefly. The winners, people are doing kind of well. It would be Walmart, and they cite because they offer groceries, and a lot of people are wanting cheaper groceries. There's middle income people looking for discounts, and they're going to Walmart. Amazon, I think that's an obvious one. Fast casual chains like Shake Shack, Cava, and Chipotle. Again, people are looking for a deal, but not going full. McDonald's is kind of doing well too because they have a $5 meal deal. And then the last one I thought was interesting on this is people that are selling jeans are doing well because of the trends of going from skinny jeans to wide leg, which is what I'm wearing today. And so everybody had to redo their closet, speaking of clothes buying. Now it talks about the losers. People are not doing as well. Target, and that's They are citing because less than a quarter of their sales are groceries. So that's, again, why I was saying Walmart was doing better. Starbucks, they aren't doing as well. We kind of know that because they've been through this revolving door of CEOs. They're bringing on this new one he was the ex-Chipotle CEO to try and change some things around. They cite that it's a lot of complicated orders that are resulting in long lines, and their new offering, like olive oil infused coffee, wasn't really working. So there's that. Other things that aren't doing well, legacy restaurants. So Red Lobster, TGI Fridays, Buca de Beppo, those kind of restaurants have all filed for bankruptcy. Red Lobster, there's a lot of like private equity drama going on there. So that's a different episode we can talk about. Big ticket items. So this kind of applies to you, but they were saying less people are redoing their homes. So less people are going to be going to Home Depot or Lowe's or Best Buy. And it's not to say that these companies are doing terrible and going to bankrupt, but they're just saying there's less this year than prior years. And the last one would be department stores. And we've talked about this with Sears closing, and they were citing how Kohl's and Macy's are closing. Nordstrom is doing okay because of Nordstrom Rack, and we'll talk more about Nordstrom later. But overall, it sounds like people are still spending money, but kind of looking for more deals. Dawn, do you agree or disagree with some of these trends?
Well, I think that when they talk about these retail trends, they're talking about the lion's share of the public and what they're going to do. And they are dictated a lot by what shows up in their paycheck. So if their paycheck isn't getting stretched as far as it needs to, they're going to start looking for deals. They're going to start looking to shop in a value way a lot more so they get more bang for their buck. The funny thing to me about retail trends, doing this for as long as I've done it now, is there's always a core group of people that in general don't deviate from what makes them feel good about purchases that they make and about the quality that they want. So, I feel like our product falls into that situation. When people are going to look for something and in a hot tub for the first time, they may not want to spend money for the top of the line product, but they want to buy it from a company that's going to take care of them. And, honestly, I think that some of the things you talked about with Starbucks and a couple of the other retailers, I think that they've lost their way in taking care of people and giving them a good experience. Yeah. And that's why they're suffering. Screw the whole custom order business. I'll tell you, when I walk into a Starbucks, that's not the problem. That is not the problem.
It's the customer service, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the same when I walk into Target today, too. It's just randomly weird stuff that's going on in those stores. And I wonder who's in charge of it and what the focus is supposed to be and what the experience is supposed to be that people are gaining when they walk in and leave the store. So I feel like that's part of what dictates where people go right now. But retail trends, there is almost no such thing. Honestly, in my opinion, I don't think there is such a thing because the wave changes as time goes on and economic stuff impacts that stuff. But, it's funny when you talk about Amazon doing well, but how many retail locations do they have today versus 5 years ago? Where they decided that they were going to be a bookseller and have a brick and mortar store and have a 4-star store and have all these different stores. And they have ultimately reverted back to doing what they're good at, which is being an online retailer. And I think that's one of our strengths because we've always tried to be very focused on what we do. We haven't deviated from what we've done. Some companies have successfully pivoted and done something new and made a success out of it. But at the end of the day, if you stick to your identity, I think you're going to survive regardless of what's going on economically. Yeah.
What about specifically like luxury shopping, as I would describe hot tubs, and kind of, I guess Peloton kind of comes to mind for me, where great time during the pandemic, people are spending the money on these kinds of things. How have you seen that kind of change over the years?
Well, I think that there's been a little bit of an interesting dynamic in our category because, of course, with the economy softening up, some discretionary purchases like this get put on the back burner or they're not as high up in the hierarchy of needs. Conversely, because of what happened during the pandemic and everybody becoming much more wellness focused, our category kind of like soared to the top for a lot of people, and it's kind of stayed there. So I don't find when you go out into the world today that people are going, I'm going to sacrifice the stuff that makes me feel better, and I'm not going to look at ways to make myself feel better and feel healthier. People are doing that every single day, and billions of dollars is spent on that category every year now. the benefit of what we sell is that it's a lot more holistic in terms of what you can do for yourself and taking care of yourself from a wellness standpoint. So I think that that's one of the appeals for our category and why it hasn't fluctuated as much. I totally got off the track and forgot the question.
No, we're talking about luxury spending trends, and I think that you answered it.
Yeah, spending trends.
Because it's different than buying a $5,000 watch. Because you can easily be like, well, maybe I don't need that watch, but buying an expensive hot tub, I don't know how much they are, but that's investing in your health, and that's a different category of spending.
Well, and you're investing in other parts of your life too, because it helps you bond with your kids. It helps you reconnect with your partners.
The experience part.
I mean, exactly. I'm back to the experience stuff that I was talking about before. One of the interesting things, which isn't necessarily applicable to what's happened recently, but I think of the downturn in 2008 and 2009, when I was the operations manager for the company at that time. I guess I forgot to mention that title. But I was overseeing the warehouse, and everybody was kind of pulling back on their big ticket spending at that time. But we have a valet service where we can have people come out to your house and take care of your water and drain and fill your tub and kind of be almost like a concierge for your tub. And there were people, I kid you not, that called and said, look, I'm getting rid of my housekeeper right now, but I'm not getting rid of my valet service because I need that hot tub.
Yeah.
And I think during times that are trying or times that are stressful in the world, that having a haven like that to retreat to, it's hard to put a dollar sign on that for people. So I think that's another reason why our category doesn't fluctuate as much as some other categories might.
Yeah.
So from a luxury standpoint, I mean, our business has softened the last couple of years, but it's not tanked.
Yeah.
And it hasn't had these massive decreases in business like some of the other luxury categories that are out there.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. I was also going to ask, when I was preparing for this interview, I was thinking about how most retailers want to create repeat customers. You want somebody to keep coming back into the Nordstrom and buy the clothes, keep coming back to the bar and buy the drinks. But for hot tubs, are you just looking for a bunch of one-time buyers? So you're not buying hot tub after hot tub after hot tub. And if that is true, if you're looking for first-time buyers, how does that change kind of your marketing and your business strategy if you're looking for more people?
Well, there's a couple points on that. First of all, and we talked about this right before I came in here, but there's a couple out in the showroom right now that are buying their second hot tub from us. And they bought their first tub from us, I think, 11 years ago. And now there's just the two of them at home. So they're downsizing their tub from the 5 to 6 person one that they had down to one that's just for the two of them. And, it also goes back a little bit to what I was talking about of not changing the identity of who you are. They know that we're going to take care of them. We've supported them all this time, and they didn't have a question of where they were going to come back to buy their next hot tub. So for us, cultivating that culture of taking care of people and doing the right thing for them is kind of paramount here, because we want people to think of us and no one else for their next hot tub, and not default to doing something weird like going to an online thing or going to some traveling show that just shows up to sell you something and then disappears on you.
Yeah.
And they can't take care of you. And if something happens from a service standpoint, there's nobody there for you. That's not who we want to be. For us, kind of creating that kind of culture so we get repeat business from our existing customers is important, but naturally we need to attract.
Right.
You need to cast a wide net.
Because if we're buying every 10 years, you got to, so it is repeat customers, but just over a longer period of time, typically. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the other part of this is that, the world today, although I do think it's reverting a little bit right now, but the world in general today is so much more mobile than they used to be in terms of where they live. So some people buy a house and in 5 years they buy another one, and in 6 years they buy another one, or they get ready to buy that vacation home that they wanted.
A good point, yeah.
So they're always moving. And although our tubs are portable, invariably nobody ever takes them with them. They leave them behind. So, I mean, it's kind of a win for us, because now we have somebody that's what we're going to inherit as a new customer that inherits that tub. And then the existing customer hopefully comes to us for a new tub or for their vacation place. So we can get multiple that way. But I will say that this year specifically, we're going to change where we're doing our marketing, and we're going to cast a wider net. We're going to do a little bit more OTT. We're going to do a little bit more over-the-top advertising, which means streaming services.
Oh, okay.
We're going to try Amazon Prime. We're going to try being on a lot more cable channels than we've been in. So we're trying to reach people where they see their advertising, or where they get forced to see advertising because they don't pony up to pay for premium memberships.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we'll see if that works. But we're just trying to be a little bit more granular with what we're doing and getting down into the weeds of where people are at and seeing if we can't generate some more leads that way and attract more people to the category.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great strategy. I also think your big sign on this street helps too, because I see it every day. We're going to learn more about your company throughout these questions. So let's move on to the next article, which is Bartell's in U Village is closing. It was founded, a little background on it, is founded in 1890, which is over 130 something years. And I did a whole episode with Kathy Lynch. She was the former CEO of Bartell's. I encourage you to go back and listen to that because she talks about why she thinks Bartell's started not doing well and kind of the pharmacy industry as a whole. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but just a quick reminder. It was founded in 1890. It's a family-owned company, but then by 2020, things were not going well. So Rite Aid bought them. And then Rite Aid was like, ooh, we can't help this either. So Rite Aid files for bankruptcy. But they emerged from it this past September, meaning they are like, we have a plan, we're gonna fix this, and it's now privately owned, so it's not public anymore. At the time that Rite Aid bought Bartell's, there were 70 locations, and now there's about 40. So part of their plan to come out of bankruptcy was to close a lot of these stores, and that's why you're seeing the one in U Village close. It does look like from the findings that it will become 2 restaurant spaces, but they couldn't find somebody to comment on that, but that does look like what will happen. So any initial thoughts on this story?
I hate it when a local company sells out to somebody big.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that there are reasons why that happens. And when you've got a company that's, that age, how much longer is your company going to be owned by family? Mm-hmm. Or how do you continue that legacy of what you started, and the grass is always greener. You get very attracted by a big number that some company there have been a number of people that approached me to buy my company.
Oh, really?
And I've said no.
I was going to ask if you would consider selling.
Yeah, because I have a different mindset in terms of what I want to do. And I'm fiercely protective of what's been built here by the previous owners and what I built now. So maybe I shouldn't care. And there have been people that I've talked to that have said, why do you really care? I'm like, because I want to feel good about what I'm doing for the people that work here.
Yeah.
And the people that left it to me, and the image that we have built and the brand that we built. I don't want it to just get squandered away. And I feel like that's what's happened to Bartell Drugs, which is heartbreaking because that's where I used to go all the time. I mean, there used to be a Bartell very close to me on Capitol Hill where I live. And it's gone, of course. In our industry over the last 5 years, there have actually been a number of my friends who had dealerships that did exactly what I do in this market in Denver, in Washington, D.C., in Philadelphia, and they all sold out to this big national pool company. Oh. And that pool company actually also bought one of my competitors that's in this market. And I will tell you that company is nowhere near the company it used to be. Really? And there's been a massive change in the landscape of who works there. And, big companies don't really want to buy your culture.
No.
They want to buy your unit numbers. They want to buy your revenue. They want to buy your turns. They want investors to look at them positively, which obviously that's one of the things that Rite Aid has to deal with. So these companies have other people to answer to the minute they get bought by somebody else.
Yep.
And the stuff that really made you important to the community in which you were operating and the employees that you supported all those years and maybe the charitable efforts that company made in the communities in which they did business, that all evaporates. So maybe I'm old school. I'm turning into an old man. I'll be 62 this month. So, I'm like, get off my yard. Yeah. Don't do that. Stop that.
These big corporations
every
coming in.
time I see a company, that gets bought by a big one, it kills me.
I agree.
And I'm fiercely protective of that with this company. So,
yeah. Well, you mentioned about how you kind of took this over from the previous owners, and Bartell's was family owned. Yeah. Olympic Hot Tub was family owned. What was that like taking over for the original founders? Did you have this things are going to be different around here, I'm going to make some changes, or was that hard to make changes with them still being involved? What was that like?
Well, the beauty of what happened when I got to this company, and I know that it was a very fortunate thing for me, we got along really well.
Yeah.
Our previous owners and myself, we just gelled. I also think that I'm very vocal and I share my opinion and I'm not shy about it.
That's what I love about you.
And I think that was really refreshing for them because they never had anybody that stood up and said, no, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And we need to try this.
Yeah.
And I kind of pushed the envelope along the way as I went into these different roles in the company. And so by the time I got to the point of purchasing it from them, I felt like I was already 80% there as an owner. Mm-hmm. It's just that I hadn't bought it from them. I was in essence running the business for them almost. And they were not having to be here as much. They could travel and go away for 3 or 4 weeks and come back and nothing was wrong. Mm-hmm. We were making money. So I think that made it the optimal situation for me to actually take over for them because it was very seamless for the employees too. There wasn't this big shake up culturally because mainly of all the things that I had done along the way.
Yeah.
So I was such an integral role that nobody was surprised.
Yeah. When it wasn't like, here's the key. Now you have the power. Now you can do all those things you've ever dreamt of doing and like fix all the problems. You had been doing that throughout the year. So this was just paperwork. Almost.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that, and they'd be the first to admit it, that they had gotten to the point of being very comfortable. Mm. So when I wanted to push to open another store at a certain point, they're like, we're good. You know,
yeah.
I mean, and so in some regard, I was my own worst enemy, you know, I mean, because I couldn't continue to do the growth that I wanted to do. So there were things that I did when I bought the company that I had pent up. Yeah. You know, it's like, these are the things I feel like I have to do, not the must do's or the nice to do's, but I have to do these right now because I wanted to do them for the last 5 years. But then I got over that and got, you know, to the point where I could start doing the things that I wanted to do that were fun. Yeah,
that makes sense. When I first started at PSBJ, the previous events director had been there a long time. And I think there's just things you don't notice. But one of the small things is that the font on the name badges was really small. And I was like, I'm going to change that. So that's my legacy there. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, the next one is Party City closing. So another closure. I know it's sad. Party City is the largest party supply store in the U.S., and they declared bankruptcy in January 2023, but couldn't overcome the debt ultimately. So we've kind of been seeing this coming. A little background on it is that it was founded in 1986, so not quite as old at all as Bartell's, but it was founded in New Jersey by this guy named Steve Mandel. So it's not a Seattle story, but obviously it affects people in Seattle because there's party cities here. But after only 3 years, he was able to franchise it. It starts getting locations all over the U.S. By 2005, he had sold to a holding corporation. And then by 2015, they go public. So this is on a trajectory, like a really good trajectory. He saw this need for a bigger party supply company and not just one-offs of mom and pops because they didn't always have all the supplies that people wanted. So it's doing well until, obviously, like I said, January 2023. They cite for reasons, I mean, of course, the pandemic we can cite, but also they say inflation, changes in consumer spending, COVID, and I guess there was a helium shortage, which I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know about that?
Oh, yeah, because we have a lot of balloons that we put in our showrooms.
Oh, yeah. I knew about the quarter shortage, but I didn't know it was helium. So that they say that affects them too. So it was all those reasons. And the process starts immediately, and then stores will be closed February 28th. This feels like a difference of just people going on Amazon and buying their party supplies. And I just don't think that they could overcome that. I guess I'll let you say any initial thoughts you have before I start peppering you with questions.
Well, you know, I mean, if you look over the last several years and you look at some of these big box retailers or big specialty retailers that have folded like Bed Bath & Beyond, mm-hmm. There's been a couple others, but, you know, I feel like the day for those 30,000 square foot stores have come and gone. Yeah. And I think that this is just the natural evolution of things in retail. You know, I mean, I think it's very funny because, again, it was like the retail trend business that I was talking. I don't think there's any real trend because I think things just evolve. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you look at what's happening today, you know, Barnes & Noble had virtually disappeared and now they're opening stores again. Oh. They're getting ready to open another one in Bellevue.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh yeah. They're on a track to open like 40 or 50 stores this year. Wow. And they'd all but disappeared practically. I know. And if you read, there's another thing that I read recently on a site that I subscribe to. They're talking about bringing back a Lord & Taylor store in Chicago. Whoa. Lord & Taylor's been gone for I don't know how many years now.
Is that a clothing store?
It's a specialty retailer. It was kind of like a smaller version of Nordstrom, but it was a department store that was around for hundreds of years, you know, in Chicago and in New York City. And anyway, they're talking about having Lord & Taylor stores again. So everything old is new again. Mm-hmm. And I think that these stores are coming back, but they're not as many tens of thousands of square feet as they used to be. They're a little bit more focused. They rely on their online part to drive their business, but they realize that people still want that experience of going into a shop and buying things. So I think that there's a happy medium there somewhere. And, you know, I mean, a number of years ago during the pandemic, everybody thought that malls were going to be dead. There's not a single vacancy practically at South Center right now, or Bellevue Square, or University Village.
Yeah, U-Village.
It's crazy. Yeah. And they keep adding more space and more locations to U-Village. So I don't know if that's really true.
Sort of speaking of this, we talked about how Sears was closing and how they were kind of the original online shop. It was a mail-in watch company, and kind of just how everything goes in circles. And I was thinking about, I feel like we're going to get to a place where people are going to be born and eventually not really experience the in-person shopping because everything will be online. This is my, like, go with me here. And I feel like these people are going to be like, you know what would be cool is if we could, like, go into a store in person and, like, try on the jeans that we keep buying online and, like, talk to somebody. Wouldn't that be cool? And then all of a sudden we start building all these retail things and these big box stores come up again. So anyway, I just think it's funny that we kind of go pendulum swing sometimes.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'd mentioned how Party City's, one of their competitors was Amazon because people can buy that online. You can't, I don't know, I don't think you can really buy a hot tub online. I looked on Amazon, they have, like, what are they called? Blow up hot tubs.
Yeah.
I think Costco you can buy, but I think you have to go in person, right? So who are your competitors and how do you handle online versus in person? And I know you have an online website, but you can't purchase from there. So talk to me about kind of the difference of online and brick and mortar.
Well, you know, our industry in general is a little bit behind the times in terms of allowing people to shop online and that kind of stuff and putting pricing online. They have finally put pricing on their manufacturing website in the last couple of years. They've been doing a lot of tests on it, but they started talking about this about 15 years ago. That's how long it took them to get to the point of actually putting pricing online.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
You know, I mean, I think that from a competitive standpoint, I don't want to sound arrogant, but of course I don't think I have any competition, but that's garbage.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that what we do is very different from the people that are in the same category we are in this city or in this region, because we are very focused on wellness products. We don't have wood stoves and patio furniture and grills and pools and all this stuff that these other ones have to stay in business. And diversity is kind of what they try to focus on. You know, they go into a season where they have to sell patio furniture, and if they don't sell it in this 3 months, they're doomed. You know, so it's taking a lot of risk. But we're fortunate to be in the Northwest where year round, it's terrific to get into a hot tub. I mean, I'll do it tonight. Yeah. And you could do that in August when it's 52 degrees at night and you're like, why is it this cold? But, you know, you still want that experience of going outside, getting to that big box of water and looking at the stars and just getting away from everything for a little while. And fortunately for us, that's something that I don't think will ever become obsolete. And I think it's become more important to people in the last 4 or 5 years. But for me, the real, truly the competition that we have, for me, one of my main concerns, and, you know, I guess it kind of goes to what you were talking about. You know, people think that Costco might be the answer for them to buy a hot tub.
That's what I was thinking for your competitor, yeah.
When you got up this morning, if you were thinking about buying a hot tub, was the first place you thought of Costco, where you buy a year's worth of toilet paper? I don't know if that's the right answer, because it's not like you can walk out the door with it and that's all you need from them. You need somebody to deliver it. You need somebody to set it up. You need somebody in 3 years if something goes wrong to be there to take care of it for you. If you have a water care question, you're going to call Costco?
Right.
No. So these people, big box retailers, online retailers, and traveling shows, which is another problem in our industry, I think it's just the worst thing for consumers because they think, ooh, this is it. This is what I need to go do. And then they get it in their backyard and realize, oh my God, what have I done? Yeah. And then they call some random 1-800 number and nobody's going to help them. So it's not something where you can just say one and done. You know, it's not like driving the car off the lot and you've had 15 cars in your life, you know, or driven cars 1,000,000 times. This is a different experience. So that's, for me, it's not necessarily, it is competition. Sure. But for me, it's almost the threat to people having the right experience, and then they get turned off to the idea of having a hot tub. The thing that mesmerizes me about doing this after all the years that I have is some people will do that and they will make those, I think they're mistakes. And when they come in to buy a hot tub from us, they will tell us about all the horrible problems they had with the last hot tub, but it didn't stop them from wanting another one.
Oh, interesting.
And it's because at the end of the day, the way it made them feel or whatever it did for their body, mind, and soul did not change. They just want to get rid of all the crap that they dealt with on the first one.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can be the people to do that for them.
I love that. Okay. No Party City closing in your future.
I think Party City will be back in 5 years.
Do you think so?
Smaller stores, different experience.
I hope so. I love Party City. Obviously I'm an event planner, but
I would go there all the time.
Walking through the aisles.
Yeah.
Like maybe you should have a Spider-Man themed party. I'll have this themed party. Like, yes. Okay. The last article we're talking about is Nordstrom going private. So we've covered this in other episodes, but it finally went through. So El Puerto de Liverpool, a Mexican retailer, paid all cash deal of $6.25 billion to make them go private. So they don't outright own Nordstrom. The Nordstrom family still has a majority stake, but they increased their ownership to where now between Nordstrom family and this Mexican retailer, they together own it. So now it's not a public company. So we've talked about like pros and cons of a public company versus private company, but you were actually working at Nordstrom when it was private. So what are your thoughts on kind of their decision to go back to private?
Well, and I actually worked for some of the Nordstrom family when I worked there.
Oh.
When I worked in Seattle, I worked for, Mr. Elmer. That's what we used to call him. I mean, he would come in to cash checks in our customer service office where I worked, and I'd see him like 3 times a week. And
that's so cool.
And Bruce and John were still in there, and Blake, who was part of the company until he passed away, he was running the shoe department at the Racks when I first started at the Racks. So, one of the things that I really valued about working there when I did, and they were still private then, is we knew that they were making the decisions. We knew that they were the ones that wanted us to do the right thing for people. And we all had profit sharing. So we were, in essence, shareholders of the company back then. And when you move into this whole public world and you have all these shareholders that are focused on their dividends and want to see turn and want to see profit and don't see the numbers that they project for whatever reason that happens, they get on this tear that they want to change something. And I mean, just like I talked about before, when you're a specialty retailer, you want things to stay the same. You want to have a unique identity. You want to approach your business the same way. You want to do the right thing for people. You want to give great service, sell the best products. And you can easily start deviating from that because of outside interference. And I'm sure that that's what they're on about and why they tried to take it private. What was it, 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah, they tried before and couldn't make it happen.
And why they wanted to do it again, because I think the family members know that they need to get back to who they were and that is what they want to do with their business. And they can't do it if they're public. So, I mean, I'm excited to see them going private. I wish it would have worked the first time around. And I mean, so much of what I learned in business came from my time at Nordstrom. And a lot of that I utilize here to this day. I think that it's going to be good for the customer. I think it's going to be good for the businesses, the communities where they're at.
Yeah.
And I think it might actually help them open some more full-line stores again. Again, they might rethink what they're doing and open smaller square footage ones.
Sure.
I don't know if anybody remembers this because I'm so old, but I keep thinking about Place 2 stores. Did you ever go to a Place 2? So Nordstrom used to have this other category of stores called Place 2, and they would have them in shopping centers that couldn't support a full-line store. There was one at SeaTac Mall, back when it was SeaTac Mall.
Oh.
There was one up in Bellingham, and there was one in Jansen Beach, I think. And anyway, they were like maybe 15,000 square feet max. I don't even think they were that big. And they just had the very best of what they sold in their different departments. And it was just a very curated offering of stuff from their mainline stores. And I keep thinking that they should bring that back, or they should reinvent the full line stores into something that's more mid-range.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of fascinating to see if they do something like that. But they're not going to do it as a public company.
Right.
Because the shareholders are going to go, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And they can't get inside the founder's minds or the family's mind. Nobody wants to be inside my mind, but if they could get in there, they might understand some of why I do what I do here. And I think that that's just what they want to get back to. I think they want to get back to being to their roots.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I'm also kind of glad. I'm trying to be more open to private equity, but I think oftentimes when another company buys it outright, then you're just beholden to them. And so maybe you don't have to have increasing revenue every single quarter like you may have with the shareholders and being public, but you still have to make money for them because they still want ROI. Right. So I think having them own it mostly with this one other retailer, I think is a good sign. I want to talk before we close the episode about going public. And was that ever something you thought about with Olympic Hot Tub? Was that something the owners thought about? I know we were talking a little before we recorded about the difference between a stock business and an asset business. So can you talk a little more about that?
Well, we're a mid-sized business now, I guess, but categorically, when you look at the revenue and that kind of stuff and our years in business, and, we started as a small business, though, in this region. And, most of the time when you have a company this size, if a private equity firm doesn't buy it and somebody comes in and wants to buy your company, you usually do an asset purchase, which means you're going to have to go through and make a valuation on the business. You're going to have to determine how much inventory they're going to buy, how much goodwill they're going to buy, the customer lists that they're going to buy that they can, continue the business from. Okay. And you're going to put a value on that. And that's going to be an asset purchase. And you're going to go up until maybe the 30th of some month, and you're going to do inventory of everything, and then you're going to close your business, and then on the next day, it's going to be your company with your inventory and your business. And that's not what we did. Really? Which is very unique for even in our industry. Alice and Blair, the previous owners of the company, the founders, they started their company and issued stock for their company, and each one of them owned a percentage of the stock. And when I bought the company, I purchased their stock. So I did a stock purchase, which is also 100% different from a tax standpoint, having to do the inventory, all this, having to renegotiate leases. Didn't have to do that with any of them. Whoa. I just had to notify the leaseholders that I was going to be buying the company, and there wasn't any of this. There wasn't a lot of work to do on that piece. So it was a really interesting thing for me to learn because I knew nothing about buying a business. Yeah. And some people might think I still don't if I told them what I did. But, it ended up being a very different experience. And it also impacts the way, from a succession standpoint, I think I will turn the company over to the next person or persons, because I may actually end up selling part of my stock to somebody and having them become a minority shareholder and ultimately becoming an officer of the company, and then someday not being the majority shareholder, or tripping over to the point where somebody goes and gets a loan and just buys me outright. Yeah. If it's the right person. But I'm not the person that wants to sell my business to a private equity firm or get bought out by some big company like somebody else in town here that did that a number of years ago. It was right for them. Yeah. I don't fault them for doing it. But in terms of preservation of what Alice and Blair started and who we are in the hot tub industry and how we're viewed and what I have built, and making sure that it's preserved and that it's going to be built upon and still be part of the communities where we do business in the right way, in terms of giving back and doing charitable things and, supporting people locally and supporting the local economy. That's what I want to do. Oh,
so well said. I'm like, I need money to go buy a hot tub right now.
Well, let's go.
Let's go. Always the salesman. So we're going to close out the episode with advice that you have for the people, if you want it to be kind of 2025 focused or just in general. What do you want the listeners to know today?
Well, for me, I just encourage people that when it comes to big purchases, I guess, maybe, because that's what I have, or if you're looking at things that are going to be critical, big purchases in the next year, don't sacrifice the things that you really want from the company you buy from and the product that you want to purchase because of price, or because it's a little bit cheaper and you think it'll be okay. Because 90% of the time when you think it's going to be okay, it's not. And when you think it's going to be okay, you have sacrificed something else on the back end that you don't realize until it's too late. So look at warranties, look at the services that the company offers you, look at their policies in terms of returns and exchanges, look at the things that you might need after you walk out the door and have signed on the dotted line, and make sure that that company is going to take care of you and support you long term. Because, whether it's a hot tub, it's a car, it's a boat, it's a Peloton. I mean, whatever you're spending a significant, and everybody's perception of significant money is different.
Right.
But, you know, think about those things. There's a certain dollar amount when you hit it. Like for me, it's over $5,000. So if you are spending over $5,000 on something, you need to look at it as an investment item instead of a purchase item.
Oh, I like
it's
that.
not a throwaway. So you want to invest that money in that product, and you want it to last a certain amount of time, perform well. And if something happens to it, you want that company you purchased from to be able to support you. So,
and it's typically going to be something you have for many years. Is it not?
absolutely. Well, if it's the right thing and you invested the right amount of money in it, you know, and do your research and make sure that they're, you know, it is a great product and it has great reviews and it has reliability, you know, all that other good stuff. But I mean, you want it to be fun too if it's a toy. But, you know, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that every day you get up to go use it, it's working.
I agree. Well, that's really good advice for everybody, especially in 25. I feel like people are probably going to be making some new purchases this year. So thank you again for hosting me and for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.